during this presentation and discussion, as opposed to just at the end or just through chat. So this might be new for some of you, so I'll go through some of the features that we have right before we start this presentation. So Lori, you've given me control. Thank you. I think I've got it. There we go. Go back once more. So let me just introduce us. We are so lucky to have Wolfgang Ulaga with us from Arizona State. He is a co-author of the book that you were shared to read, Service Strategy and Action, a fabulous how-to guide. And if you haven't managed to read it all, don't leave us, because Wolfgang is going to give us a quick summary of things so you can be up to speed on what's there if you didn't make it all the way through the book. And then we're going to have a good portion of time for discussion and questions. And you can be very specific if you want, even about your current company and situation. But do know that this isn't a confidential location. So be careful of what you say if you don't want to share something specific about your company. Then you have a picture of me there. So here's how this works. You have joined this, and you should be able to see a bar such as the black one here on the bottom half of your screen. Kind of scroll around if you have to make sure it pops up. Unless you click on the mute button that is there, you will be able to speak and we'll be able to hear you. So you can mute if you feel like you don't want to accidentally say something out loud, but make sure you're unmuted when you're talking. If for some reason you're still not able to be heard, if you click on participants below, you'll see a list of all of the participants that are in the meeting, and you can click on a button which is in the bottom half of that box that says raise hand. And I'll be watching. If you click raise hand, I'll be able to see that you raise your hand. So I've just raised my hand now, and if you're opening that button, you can see that my hand is raised, and then I can lower it. You can also do mute me from that place. If you'd prefer to type in your question and have it read later, you can type it in the chat bar, whatever suits you. Do we have any questions on that? Someone answer yes, no. Can someone say no, they have no questions? I'm just testing that they're hearing me.
When we don't reply, it means we have nothing intelligent to say.
Excellent. It's just something, right? Just even if it's no, because no answer is no answer. Okay, great. All right. After this whole thing will be recorded, and after this, the recording will be sent to everybody who attended. And in addition, we'll be sharing it with Wolfgang and his team. They're going to be sharing it with their folks as well. And you can always have access to this as a member of ISBM through b2bpulse.isbm.org. If you have any questions about that, feel free to contact myself or Lori, and we'll help you get access. So I don't maybe necessarily need to tell you folks that are all members here that we are ISBM, the Institute for the Study of Business Markets, and we're headquartered at Penn State with offices in Philadelphia and Chicago. And we're a network of researchers and practitioners in the B2B space. Here are the folks that have signed up. So I see Vic is here and Robert is here, and perhaps these other folks will join us during the call. Little advertisement as we get started, just to remind you that we have our big talk coming up on September 19th and 20th, formerly called a members meeting. We used to have these physically, but this particular one we've decided to change. We feel like the topic here, the thriving marketer, is really around the changing functions of marketing and the changing needs of marketers in the market. And we wanted to have whole teams attend. And we know that's a challenge for most companies to afford to send more than one person to a 2-day meeting. So this is now live, but it's online. And we're hoping that you will actually attend with your entire team. And you can even bring non-marketing people to the event. Companies are setting up a conference room space where you can see the presentations. They're set up about the same as our in-person meeting was, but we have more space between those as people might come and go between these individual presentations. And I hope you'll sign up. For members, it's entirely free. So that means bring as many people as you like, and you can even have people attend from different locations in your company around the world. If you need
so Lynn, this is Vic. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Have you guys sent out the invitations for the actual webinars themselves? Because I had the physical invite, obviously, in Penn State, but I'm just not sure. Are the invitations for the webinars out?
Yeah, so I'll let Lori answer that question. Did Vic receive this in an email, Lori?
The emails have been out and registrations have come in. There will be individual URLs for each meeting presentation. Those will come out probably just before the meeting, just before the meeting starts in September. What I'm hoping to send everybody that registers is an agenda with direct links to each presentation, to each session, so you can log right in directly to each session, because there will be individual logins. So it won't be a whole day that you have to stay into the same session, but you'll log in and out for each one.
Does that answer your question?
Okay, it does, but I don't know if, like, who sent the invitations out? Just the...
We will.
Is it?
So if you have more than one person from your company who wants to see this, they should register as an individual, and then we will send them directly the links to all of the sessions.
Okay, but there was an email to register, you said?
Yes. And Vic, I don't see any of your team registered yet, so I just checked all that out. There'll be more coming.
Is it under your name though? Because I don't understand.
They've been coming from ISBM at psu.edu.
All right, so maybe I just missed it. Maybe. Okay, thank you.
So Lori will send you another one after this.
Thank you.
But you can also find us at isbm.org. and register through that. Again, it's free to as many people who are part of a member company. If you'd like to run it from a conference room, you can just take one of those registered memberships and use that to run it for everyone.
Well, I registered when it was a physical event still. Does that mean I have to register again for the webinar, for the digital thing?
Yes, it would be. Yeah.
Okay.
But Lori will take care of you personally, right, Lori?
Yep, I can move you over, Vic. That's not a problem.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for all of that. Sorry for taking up the time on it. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so let me advance the slide if I can. There we go. All right, so let's get started. I'm going to just briefly introduce Wolfgang, but he can probably do much better in terms of talking about his experience. I know he will share with you how he got to the point where he is with this, the book that they've written. It's been based on many, many years, and I think you'll find this fascinating. Not only the information that drove these conclusions and directions, but also just the insights as he's gone forward. We had a brief conversation before. It was just it's just going to be fascinating. So let me pass this to you, Wolfgang, and you'll have then the ownership of the directions. So Lori, if you would pass it for me.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for dialing in. Again, thank you for the nice introduction. I'm really excited about the opportunity to exchange and discuss with you about this topic. So what I've planned is about a 25 to 30 minute overview of our topic and the key challenges, and then open it up for discussion, a Q&A, and I'm really curious what you think about the book, what your reactions are, and how that resonates with the markets and the services you have on your own. So let me see, when I click here, can I go down here? Lori, should I click with the mouse or how should I do that? Here we are.
There you go. Good job.
Okay, fine. So first of all, just a quick background about the two authors. So this book is written together with my colleague Christian Kowalkowski. He's a professor in Europe and specializes in industrial business-to-business services, like I do. And myself, I'm at ASU, WP Carey School of Business. I have I have a double role. I'm a professor of marketing, and especially in industrial markets. So the company names I've seen on our list, they all resonate very well with the industries and markets I've been working on. I spent most of my career in Europe. My last position was at IMD Business School in Lausanne in Switzerland, and I moved about 2 years and a half now ago to the US, where I have this second role as well, which is I'm one of the 2 executive directors of the Center for Services Leadership at WP Carey, and I'll just talk about it very briefly so that you know the background of this center. Let's see. Yes. So our Center for Services Leadership is a little bit like a mirror to what you know from ISBM. This center focuses since about 30 years on services and service with a big S to compete in markets. So we are interested in everything from services marketing, services operations, human resources. It's a cross-disciplinary center around how to use service as a competitive tool. And at this point in time, we have 45 member firms. When you look at these members, it's a little bit like yours. Basically, we have companies both in the B2C and B2B spaces. So on the one hand, you will find firms like Edward Jones, or you will find PetSmart, but then we have business-to-business firms as well, like Boeing or Avnet, that really look specifically into how do I develop a service-centric logic. Similar example here. Companies like Honeywell or Siemens would be more on the B2B side, while Starbucks or Marriott would be more on the B2C domain. So that is where we are coming from. We have this emphasis on services, and that was also the reason why I moved from Europe to the US, because I wanted to be working with companies in the center here. Now let's move directly to our I can't move it here. I'll try to move here. Good. So just before we step into the book, let's take one step back and look at what's unique about this book. When we came together for this project, we had a number of ambitions. The first ambition was really that we wanted to write a book, not in an academic style, but we wanted to write a book that is specifically talking to executives and managers that are in charge of service growth, that really look after how to lift the service business to a higher level inside the company. And to do that, we really wanted to not only just write about it, we wanted to provide a hands-on, practical roadmap of how you systematically design a service strategy and put it to practice. And we wanted to ground it, on the one hand, in real-life examples of companies we've worked with over the many years, but also tie it to research we've done ourselves, or we've done with others, or by others, to have the theoretical underpinnings of that. And we really found that when we looked at the market and looked at other books or publications, we felt that there was a void and there was a need, a missing piece that we wanted to bring to the table here. The other thing is, and I learned this in my time when I was at IMD. IMD is a school which is a lot about change management and transformation. That's a particular positioning of that business school in Europe. And at my time there, I really learned that we talk a lot, especially we academics, we discuss a lot the concepts, the frameworks, the what needs to be done, but we just felt that we don't spend enough time on how things should be done and how to implement those service strategies. And because of that, we identified a number of topics you actually probably have seen in the book that are normally not covered by other books. I'm thinking about the leadership and change management dimension. I'm thinking about bringing distributors on board and working with intermediaries. So these are topics that we picked up in the book, which were not seen, or which we just were missing in elsewhere. And we felt like to really tackle this issue holistically, there are a number of topics that also need to be covered, and we try to do it in this book. So having said that, let me jump in right away into the background. So I think one of the big strengths of this book is that we took this experience of working over and over in workshops, in sessions with companies. So I think that's one of the particular strengths of this book is we've been there, we've seen that, we've worked through issues on service design and service development, or getting away with the problem of giving away prices for free, or salespeople and recruitment issues. So what you see here is the list of companies, or most important companies. There's actually way more, but those we really had the chance to talk through, think through issues of how do I capture more value as a business-to-business company, and especially so, how do I do it with a systematic service approach. So you see, these companies are from lots of different industries. Some of them are in components, some of them are in ingredients. We go all the way from mining. Rio Tinto has been a company I've worked with for quite some years in the past. But we go all the way to machine manufacturers, complex equipment, sometimes very, very large machines. I'm thinking about KBA Anotasis. That's a Swiss company. It's the world leader of printing machines for money. They are the world leader in all the money being printed around the globe, and it's based in Switzerland. To no surprise, it's a Swiss company. So the message here is lots of different industries, lots of different starting points. The common core, though, is all of these firms, or most of these firms, or many of the firms, they have an industrial core. They have a product centric core, and they have been looking into how can we grow beyond that core on top of what we traditionally do. So as I said, we didn't want to limit ourselves. Our book is also grounded in lots of publications, academic publications, practitioner work, goes all the way from Harvard Business Review to Journal of Marketing, also prior books. Christian had written a book in Swedish, actually, and I had written a book before in French, but we just felt we need to continue the journey and develop something, and to do it in English so that it's for a global base. Now, what about this issue of service growth? What I find intriguing or really, really exciting is that this is a very broad trend, and it touches all kinds of industries and markets. To give you an example, one of our members is Procter & Gamble. It's a member firm here at CSL, and they have a few years ago decided to take one of their blockbuster brands, Tide, and figure out ways of how can we design innovative service business models around our big brands. And one of the first brands they took is Tide, and since a few years now they developed Tide Dry Cleaners, which is a chain of stores. Let me switch to the next one, which are actually taking the physical space of products into the service space and search for ways to get closer to customers, own customer relationships, and most importantly, redefine the job to be done. What are we really doing for customers? So instead of just saying, well, we are in the business of selling Tide containers and pushing them through the retail channel in Walmart stores and elsewhere, we really want to define that customer job in a broader way and help customers solve the problem of how do I get my clean clothes, how do I feel good, how do I go about solving the problem of a chore, which is going to the cleaners. And when you look at this, they have been extremely innovative in taking customer insights, deep customer knowledge, and now are creating a business that has 54, at this point in time, 54 stores across the United States and significantly growing. And it will be interesting to see how they will develop over time. We wrote a business case about it. It's one of our CSL cases in service excellence. There's lots of learning around this case when we discuss and teach it here in our programs. Now, it's also a very bold move in B2B. And just as a quick reminder here, we have a similar scenario going on in the B2B world where companies take a step back, redefine what is the job to be done, how can we bring more efficiency and effectiveness to our customers, if this is the B2B world, and how do we shave cost away, how do we make productivity improvements accessible to our clients. And so these are companies I've worked with in the past. Michelin tire business, how to stop selling tires only and start selling output-based complex contracts. How do I sell kilometers or miles through a 5-year contract instead of just pushing as many tires as I can? And similarly, you have a company like Hilti, about tool solutions. You have Thales in cockpit electronics and in-flight entertainment. How do I bring these in-flight entertainment solutions, for example, to airline companies? You have it in the healthcare space. You have it in automotive with coating and paint shops. In fact, it's a very broad ambition by companies. And I would say that especially we see it here in our center with this idea about everything as a service, or for example, data as a service in these days. Many of our member firms here, and I'm sure you have the same considerations, actively ask, how can I become a true service-centric company by monetizing data I have, by monetizing analytics, and redefining them as a service. So I would say the exciting news is that this trend is not only it's not at a maturation, it's actually accelerating and growing because of those recent developments. Now, what do we need to know? What are the key challenges? So what we try to do here in our book is we sat down and said, look, this is a strategic initiative. This is not a minor cosmetic little change. Let's just sit down and write a few new service concepts down and put some marketing brochures and little sales support there. In fact, this is a major transformation. It's a transformation journey, and the journey needs a roadmap. So what we did, and you see that here, we looked into how can we look at those major issues from a foundational perspective, from the strategy formulation perspective, of how do you then break it down and implement it, and how do you put a structure around it. So these are the 4 levels, and in each of the levels you have 3 chapters that you've seen in the book. It's really about thinking about why should I go after services, what are the unique challenges, and how do I make sure I have a service culture in place. It's then asking, how do I craft a service strategy? Do I have the right capabilities and resources in place? In fact, we called it, am I fit for service? Can I do my internal checkup and ask myself, am I actually ready to go? And do I have the right vision and visionary leadership to accelerate that transformation? Then it's about practical implementation issues. We focused on 3 that we have seen over and over being asked for by companies. One is about pricing of services. It's a real challenge. You know, I've rarely seen a company that has said, I'm totally happy with the pricing of those services that we develop. It's about rethinking the way we innovate, and how do we implement, how do we produce, how do we deliver those services in a most productive and cost efficient and effective manner. In other words, how to make sure that we don't have costs going out of the rudder. And then we have a number of organizational issues that just also pop up over and over. A big one of them, the biggest one there is my sales force actually ready? How do I transition from a product-centric to a service-savvy sales force? This has been a topic that has occupied us over and over for many years now. How do I steer the sales force transformation? Do I have the right people? Do I have the right sales approaches, the right incentive systems? Do I need a specific service organization? How should I design it? And then how do I connect with my partners? Oftentimes it's an overlooked issue. I'm really impressed by that. And many companies just don't spend enough time on partnering with the channel, tying the channel into their approach, and working with the channel. So, of course, we cannot talk about all of these 12 issues here. What I've done is I've selected a few and put the projector light on a few of them, and then we can open it for debate, discussion, and have a Q&A around those, or even other topics that you might be interested in. All right. Now, first topic, and the reason for the first topic is because we found that it's overlooked, but extremely important, and that is, I think, what we've seen, many managers have in the past overlooked the challenges posed by building a service culture. And building the service culture from day one, looking in it from day one, because if you don't do it, it will come up in later stages. It will create frustrations. It will create misconceptions and frustration among people. Why can't we not lift off this or that initiative? Well, most of the time it's because we don't have a service culture. So in the book we talk about it. We give the main reasons of why this actually is a problem. And you see that on the left side, there are good reasons of why this happens. It's the product-centric mindset. It's the fact that sometimes we are missing deep customer insights. It's the fact that we don't have the willingness to actually deeper connect with customers and involve them and co-create with them. It's the idea that as a company, I will have to learn the rules of the service factory, and oftentimes I don't have that knowledge. It's the fundamental changes in terms of how do I move from a CapEx to an OpEx logic, and what are all the implications, the cultural changes to my finance, to my accounting, to my sales, to my technicians. And it's also the fact that, especially in B2B, we've seen that many companies, as they go through an indirect channel, meaning they sell to distributors who then sell to customers, they don't have enough channel control or channel power, and that asks for how can we change that? So these are good reasons for what you see on the right side. The right side is what we did is we looked at how do companies change, and how do they, even if they are in a non-service centric culture, if they're in a product centric culture, how do they go about it? What do they do? And so we identified actually 4 stages, 4 transition stages where we see how successful companies have moved. The first stage is what we call the service desert. I've seen lots of firms where services are nowhere on their priority list. Services are actually a necessary evil. Services are must-haves. You know, even some companies call them after-sale services. In some firms, it's after-sale services, and I think it really says what it is. It's a thing that I consider once the sale has been done. After sale services. You just have to look at the first 3 letters of these 3 words to see what it means in many companies. Now, successful firms, they have moved out of this and they have started to invest into building service portfolios, but then they run into a second problem, and the second problem is what we call the dark tunnel. That problem is the fact that I keep investing, I keep throwing resources at services, I build capabilities and ramp up infrastructure and people, but I don't immediately see the return on services. And so here the challenge is that sometimes companies pull the plug. I've seen this several times where executives have said, this is going nowhere, not fast enough, we stop it. And that is a problem, because to really succeed, it takes time to develop and implement a service strategy. Michelin, the tire company, just to give you an example, took 15 hard years to actually move their solution business into the profit zone. This is not something that can be done overnight. So we have to come to this third logic, which is I need to see what we call the promising light. And promising light basically means I need to find quick wins. I need to find tangible outcomes that I can showcase and document that we are on the right track. I call them the quick wins. And then only companies move, and some of the companies have done this very successfully, move into services as a growth engine. In some of the firms I've worked with today, services are 50%. I'm thinking about a material handling company I'm working with in the material handling space, forklift trucks. $1 out of 2, €1 out of 2 today is earned with service with a big S. So 50% is service revenue out of the overall revenue, and the profitability is really significant. So that's the cultural issue, and the message here is don't underestimate the cultural implications. Oftentimes we assume people will follow, but this is a typical strategic initiative where there are multiple reasons of why this might not happen. Now, if we move to the next one, let's see, that I have trouble with my computer doing that. Yes. Designing a portfolio is the next interesting question, and that is we have analyzed how companies actually grow the service business, and what we find is that the trajectory, the roadmap of how to grow the service business can follow different paths. What you see here is a comparison of 2 basic questions, and that is how do I want to grow the service business? One way to grow the service business is to actually say, I want to move away from promising just inputs to customers, doing things for customers, and I want to start moving to promising outputs. I want to actually change the nature of the value proposition. Another major dimension is to say, I also want to not focus on myself, me, myself, and I, me and my products. I also want to get closer to customers and customer processes. And we found that companies, by looking at these two dimensions, we found that companies find smart ways of growing out of the traditional space. Now, the traditional space is classical product lifecycle services. That's what you see on the lower left box in this matrix. Services like I install, I deliver, I maintain, I repair. These are must-have services. And interestingly enough, many companies don't realize that they are already in the business of doing these services, even if they give them sometimes away for free. Then how do companies move? Now, one way to move is to move into changing the promise by going after promising asset efficiency. These are examples where I start promising getting more productivity out of assets. So for example, I sold you a big machine, I sold you an expensive equipment, now I sell you remote diagnostics, online monitoring to get more productivity out of the machine. Another way to grow is to say, well, I grow into process support. These are all the services like consulting, diagnostics, training, services that may or may not be directly linked to a product. And then only companies move, very interestingly, companies only move after those lateral moves, they move into customer solutions. Customer solutions are focused on customer processes, promising outputs on processes, steps which are large or small, but which want to take charge on specific processes. So for example, typical example is Michelin tire fleet management. We don't sell you a tire, we sell you the outcome of running kilometers, miles with the tires. So with that in mind, and by the way, interestingly, just before I move to the next one, we've never seen a company move directly from the product space into solutions. And the reason is you need a number of strategic resources and capabilities to be able to do that. Now, what are these resources and capabilities? In one of the chapters, we designed almost like a checklist of what are the strategic resources you need, what are the capabilities to develop out of these resources to turn them into either revenue generating or productivity and cost saving opportunities. And both of them are increasing revenues and margins. Now, I don't want to go through all of those, but to give you a few examples. So what we found in doing this research and interviewing executives and managers, we found that companies need to own assets. So for example, one typical asset or resource is, do I have an installed base? Do I control an installed base of equipment products? And do I access usage and process data? Big issue these days with data and analytics. But we found also that more often than not, companies might have the data, but they don't know what to do with it. I've seen companies that have zillions of, in fact, very interesting customer data available, but they have not cast it into a commercial offer to be able to sell it. Now, that's why a resource has to be translated into a capability, which is, do I have the data processing and interpretation capabilities? And then do I have the sales capabilities to take that offer once I have designed it and turn it into a commercial service that customers might be paying for? So you see the interplay here. This goes all the way down. It's the same with product development and manufacturing assets. Michelin had a tire, the tire company had a tire, which is an asset, which is actually a technological beauty. It's a high-performing tire. It's a very expensive tire. It's a tire that is more expensive than a commodity tire. But the tire is the basis for designing, you see the box, design to service capability, for designing a complex contract with all the bells and whistles, so that I then can sell fleet management to business customers. So the asset is the tire, the capability is the service design capability, and many companies, unfortunately, only think about R&D in terms of products and don't think about R&D in terms of service from the get-go, from day one. But this is the skill needed to then be able to develop competitive advantage. So you have that in all of those 4 areas, and the book describes those areas. Now, in each company, there might be specific add-ons, there might be additional resources, there might be different capabilities. Doesn't really matter. I think the key message here is, in my industry, in my market, I need to pinpoint what are the critical resources needed for me in my industry, and what are the core capabilities to lift the service business off the ground. Now, remember we talked about culture. Now here comes this issue back, because if we don't have that, and if we are not there, we need change management. We need leadership, and we need a pilot in the plane to drive the transformation. It will not come by itself. And that's why we added this chapter in the book about, if we take what we know from change management, if we take what we know from leadership, but if we apply it in this particular context of service strategy, design, and development, then we can see how this plays out in our service strategy field. So in the book, we talk about it at length. We look at what are the different types of people, players, depending on their attitude towards service growth and the hierarchical level in the organization. And you will see that at each of the hierarchical levels, you have people that basically are fully on board, are ready to evangelize everybody around, up to people who are not only just sitting on the fence or bystanders, but outright detractors, or working against it. And there are good reasons sometimes why people do it. So I'm not going into all the details, the book describes it, but I just wanted to remind you about how important that issue is and how important it is to proactively manage it. Now, the most important ones are, of course, those on the right-hand side here. These are the ones you really want to start working on at all levels. Now, on the implementation side, just one illustration, one highlight, which is really something that I've been working now for many years, and it's a fascinating topic in the implementation piece about pricing. And within the pricing, there is this nagging problem of giving away, once we have services or we do services, not charging for them. And it's just amazing how many good things companies do. Free drawings, free inventory holding, free diagnostics, free training, free shipping, you name it, and we don't charge for it, although there is value for the customer. Now, in the book we touch on it. We now have several articles only on that particular topic ongoing. The big question is, how at the moment of truth, if I really develop services, or have already existing services in my portfolio, how do I get, I would call this, how do I get the R out of the free? How do I move from free, giving away services for free, to how do I ask or start charging for those services? And in the book we talk about it. We have some tools, we have some methods now over time, we have examples. I think it's a really, really intriguing topic that we picked up here in this book. I see the time is quite advanced, so I'll go a little bit faster here on these ones. In the book we also have a topic on how do I think in new ways about service innovation, in comparison to product innovation. And the case the book makes, or the argument we develop there, is that service design and development has a number of unique characteristics specificities that I cannot just take my existing R&D on product out of the product space and plug and play and apply it and hope that it will just do the trick. So we explain how we look at that in this particular domain. We also have a chapter, and I think that is a unique thing in the book. We have dedicated a full chapter on transforming the sales organization. And I've seen this over and over as a real big issue of conflict, because sometimes we have a big strategy in place, we have a management ambition, let's go out and sell services or grow our service business, but then we find one of the biggest hurdles is in the implementation. We don't have the sales organization, we don't have the sales force that is set up correctly to actually push our service strategy. And that's why we have in the book a whole issue about what's the nature, what's the different nature of services sales, especially if I'm coming out of an industrial product sale perspective. What are the capabilities that are needed to do this type of sale? And which is not being shown here, but we also have a section on what kind of personality traits, hiring characteristics are needed, because we looked at high-performing product salespeople versus high-performing service salespeople, and we found that sometimes the same personality trait can be extremely helpful in the product space, explaining why somebody's a star performer in product sales, and why at the same time this can even be a hurdle or slowing me down to be also a high-performing service or solution salesperson. And in fact, much to our surprise, we found situations where actually variance in sales performance was huge when a company took high-performing product salespeople and all of a sudden assigned them to service sales. Some people did very well, while others, although they were high-performing in product sales, did not do well at all in the service space. So in that chapter, we talk about it, we provide recommendations, we give a checklist of what to do.
So Wolfgang, I would encourage you to see if we could wrap this up so that we can actually have some questions.
Yes, so the last topic here is about design, and I will not go into details. In the chapter you will see that, or you've seen that, it's just asking the question then about do I have the right organization? Do I have the right structural setup for doing that? And that brings me to my last slide. The book is in itself wants to be a vehicle, but we also have a platform, we have a website, we have a community of practice. And if you'd like to be engaged with it through ISBM, through the center, but just by being hooked up with our Twitter and social media presence, we love to hear from you and hear your comments about how that resonates with your own businesses and your own industries. So let me stop here and open it up for debate and discussion. I'd be very curious to hear about your view and especially your challenges that you face in your industry.
Okay, so if you would make sure that your mic is open, you can feel free to weigh in.
So this is Vic Martua. I don't think my mute thing really matters, does it? Because I'm on the phone.
Nope, you're fine. Yes.
Okay. Because I think you can hear me whether I'm muted or not.
Yes.
But it was really a very interesting book. I just got it a couple days ago, so I haven't had a chance to read it. But previously, I've been involved with Stephen Brown in service blueprinting at ASU. He came over. I was working at Dow Chemical at the time. He came over, did a really great job of getting 3 or 4 of my teams to start thinking very consciously about it. One of the challenges or hurdles that I think I've seen in trying to do this in my past is that, and I'm not sure if it's one of the hurdles in your book, but is the level of high leadership, top leadership mind share patience, and I think you talked about patience a little bit, to give teams the long-term commitment, because it does take a lot of time. It is a journey, as you mentioned. So I think your point around the promising light or showing short-term wins is very important. But I've seen where there is no mind share for it because it's not significant enough on a quarter-to-quarter basis, and they're dealing with firefighting. So top leadership more and more, I think, in public companies are more concerned around the short term than they are the longer term strategic aspects, and never really put too much. Can you comment about what you can do around that, changes around that you've seen that would be positive to changing the perception around this long-term view, and do you see success in private companies, public? Where do you see the successes? I mean, where do you see where organizations have been successful in doing this?
Yeah. So thank you, Vic, for this remark, and I'm happy to learn that you have connected in the past with Steve. Steve is a good colleague, still work together. So this is an extremely important point. Leadership commitment, leadership mind share is a make or break of service strategy. I'm thinking about one European company in the component space, where they recently had a CEO change, actually, and the new CEO unfortunately is putting the wheel backwards, because he's a product person. He comes out of a manufacturing logic. He doesn't see or believe enough about the true value of the service strategy. And it's very interesting to see how this company has spent 15, 18 years of going into the service and solution direction. And now you can really see a pendulum swinging back because of what the CEO does and how he speaks about it. Maybe willingly or unwillingly, but it does have an impact on what middle management does and sees. So it's definitely a thing. I've seen other companies where middle management was hugely convinced about going after tech-enabled services, pushing the needle, but there was an issue about lukewarm support by top management, and to no surprise, it took a long time for these initiatives to get off. Now, on the opposite, I'm thinking about a German company, which in the agricultural equipment world, and where it's a different scenario, because while it's becoming very big, it's still privately owned, like many of these German companies. The CEO and founder is entirely behind this, and there is no disconnect and there is no break in the logic at all. And therefore, to no surprise, their service portfolio has grown dramatically. So I think what we can see from that is that there is this short-term versus long-term concerns, but there's also the issue of how much does my top management actually stand behind and beyond the lip service in every meeting, in every internal management meeting, in meetings with customers, or where we bring customers actually into the firm, documents and showcases that this is actually a strategic priority and not just a minor issue. One particular practical thing is some companies have hired a service champion. I'm thinking about a company like Schneider Electric years ago. They hired a vice president of strategy and service development, just to document that this is a board level priority, and we have a board member looking after this topic.
That's good. Okay. No. Yeah, you need that kind of commitment. I think you need to have that structural commitment to make it long term, and not just one of many initiatives in a business that will not get the mind share when it's not significant from a profitability perspective at that point.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, the other quick question, I don't know if there's anybody else, but is around, we've got, in the company that I work for now, a lot of products that are very high priced, commoditizing, so kind of entering the commodity magnets, if you will. And so we're looking at more than just product features and product attributes from a customer value benefit perspective. And so we wanted to drive into the service space, looking at product lifecycle management services, et cetera, to bring in higher value. But the pricing of that is such that the customers are used to being priced on a per product basis. How have you seen people migrate from a product pricing, and it's an entitlement for your higher price versus it's an a la carte service element that you can buy and you will pay for?
Yeah, that's a nagging problem, the idea about the commodity magnet. And if I'm in a situation where I'm high-priced and expensive product specialist, how do I compete? Now, what I've seen, those companies who do this successfully, I'm thinking about a company in Switzerland called Bossard. They are in the business of fasteners and fastening systems. Go all the way from nuts and bolts to complex products that go into cars like Tesla here in the US and elsewhere. They started in 2012 to try this logic. And what it basically comes back to is you really start selling the value-based sales and value-based marketing go really hand in hand with this service logic. So you need to ramp up the deeper customer intimacy of where is the value for customers, how can we in their business bring the value in terms of shaving costs away, increasing productivity, redefining, that's my early idea about job to be done, redefining what we actually do and how we do it. And then the services are basically the execution arm of doing it, because almost naturally you then gravitate to, if I really want to do all of this, I have to provide those services. So Bossard is in the business of helping customers getting more total cost of ownership, more availability, decreasing costs in the supply chain, and making them leaner and meaner and more efficient. And so basically for example, the inventory management solutions, which are services, have come almost naturally, because if that is the ambition and goal, we only can do it if we provide these type of offers, and if we find smart ways ourselves to do that. Now, do I have the people? Do I have the resources in place? That's the other question that we tackle with this audit of resources and skills. But I think that's, when we talk about the commodity magnet, that's one of those things to get away with the commodity magnet, because I'm becoming such more a competent partner that can talk eye on eye with a customer about these issues others cannot talk about.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thanks for the question. Good one.
So this is Robert. Amazon always tells us to say thank you for this free copy, and I'm giving you an unbiased review. I read the book. I work in the commodity industry. We're miners. We take minerals out of the ground and we transport it and we sell it. So when you start to read a book like this and it talks about upper management engagement and that, it really makes you start to think of what we can do in terms of an organization for service. And the more you think about it, the more opportunities you can see. I found the book to be very well structured. I liked the stories. About halfway through, it suffered the halfway through book event. I don't know what it is that after you get halfway through, either you're so full your mind can't take any more, or the stories got less interesting. I can't tell, because when I look back through it, there's always interesting stories. I found that you had a lot of good little excerpts of real applications, which made it work very well. Like everything, I think if you apply just this, it starts the journey, and then you learn as you go along. Some of the graphics were a bit too small for my eyes. That may be my age. But overall, I really enjoyed it, and I'm going to lend it to my colleagues so they too can learn. Because we're in a commodity type setup, I realize that the sourcing people really need to understand this, because there's a lot of people at their doors trying to use this, and they can prepare for something to see where the best interest is for our company, example, tires, whatever like that, like you say, Michelin and that, so that we too can be prepared for these type of offers. So overall, it was well worth my time, and I enjoyed today's talk.
Thank you so much. Two remarks here. First of all, this is a test. The book is the version 1.0. So, and we also tried to go with a different editor, tried to be innovative as well. We published it through Amazon CreateSpace, self-edited it. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to, all the things we hear from you guys as experts, we want to write the next version of the book and make this a co-creation process. And if we have a better influence on the book by being able to rewrite chapters, by doing a self-publishing, we really want to go that route and do it. So any comment we get from you is a wonderful comment.
If you have, do you have table 6.1 in front of you?
Let me see. Yeah, I can have it. Which page?
Okay, page 111.
Okay.
Why did you make me suffer? There is so much information on this. It's Steve Jobs would have put you in a corner. So that's the only thing I think you could maybe relook at, is that when you're putting so much information onto a thing, maybe have a 6.1a, which gives a kind of a step to that one, because it's just so much to absorb. Okay?
Granted.
But it's not a complaint. It's just my small eyes.
Yeah, no, it's true. And you know, the quality of the book, I mean, in the best of all worlds, we wanted to have a better quality, but that's working with Amazon. Some things we found on as we are going. It's a new editor, but it's not a classic editor either. So some of the things we would have liked to do better, and we need to find solutions. But this is one I'm writing down, how to either break up tables or have fewer and clearer information. Yeah, that's a good one.
If you look at the Duarte method of doing these type of things, you can take your graphics, use them in the PowerPoints, use them in the book, use them in your presentations. Okay. So if you take all your figures as basically a basis, and you have them so that you can use them for the web, for a book, for a PowerPoint, for whatever, you might find it might empower you. Duarte, it's a lady that has these really long PowerPoints on the web, like they're really heavy. Yeah. But overall, basically, it means that you have your core knowledge, and then from that core knowledge, you're using your marketing, you're using your book, you're using your presentation, but it's always coming from the same basis. You're not redoing everything, and it's always simplified.
Well, that's exactly what we need. That's exactly what we would need. Well, thank you for that. Huh?
Now, myself is, I only had an hour, so I have to go, but I really appreciate this, and I wish you success.
Well, thank you so much. Much appreciated.
Thank you. So we did run a bit over, but I really appreciate everyone staying with us till near the end, and I think that was highly valuable. Wolfgang, thank you so much for running this experiment with us and doing our first Authors Forum. I hope that you'll be able to share the recording. It will run for the full length. And do provide us with some feedback on what people are saying as they've listened to the recording. That would be helpful for us for the next one.
Thank you so much. Deeply grateful that you provided the forum to do this, the first initiative, as you said. I hope you have many of those coming in the next months and year.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, Lori, for hosting this with us.